It was a cloudy day when I finally decided to return to the orphanage where I spent my childhood. Feelings of nostalgia and sadness mixed inside me as the car approached the old building. The orphanage, with its worn walls and dusty windows, seemed like a distant echo of everything I had experienced. Every step I took towards the entrance felt like a dive into memories that I tried to bury, but that were still very much alive. This is where it all started, I muttered to myself, my voice breaking. The memories of running through the halls, of the laughter and tears, all flooded my mind. I remembered Dona Clara, the director who always had a kind look, but who also seemed to carry the weight of the world on her shoulders. Before entering, I took a deep breath, trying to gather my courage. What did I expect to find there? A closure? An answer to the emptiness I always felt for not having a family? As I walked through the front door, I was greeted by a familiar smell of polished wood and, at the same time, an aroma of unresolved things. The space was still the same, but the atmosphere was different. It was as if time had frozen, but I had grown. Sarah? Dona Clara's voice echoed through the hall, and soon she appeared, with a warm smile that made me feel at home. Dona Clara, how long? I said, my heart pounding. She came over and hugged me tightly, as if she was afraid I would disappear again. My God, how beautiful you look. Time has only been good for you, she commented, pulling me to a quieter corner. You've always been a special girl. How's your life? It's okay. I have a family now, a son named Ethan. But I needed to go back. I feel like there are things here that I've never fully understood. I confessed, feeling tears threatening to escape. Oh, honey, growing up without a family is a pain that many take. But you are strong, and that is admirable. Dona Clara replied, her voice soft and comforting. What exactly are you looking for? I don't know. Maybe a little closure. A way to understand why all this happened, he said, while looking around, as if waiting for the walls to speak. I still remember the feeling of being here, the lonely nights and the dreams that never came true. She nodded, her eyes seeming to water. Many of our little ones have similar stories. The love they need often seems so far away, but it's never too late to find family. The conversation flowed, full of memories and laughter. Dona Clara told me about some children who were at the orphanage, and at the same time, I relived the simplest moments of my childhood. But suddenly she interrupted me. There's a boy, Lucas, that you need to meet. He's special, said Dona Clara, her tone changing to something more serious, almost mysterious. Luke, I asked, intrigued. Why is he special? You'll see, was all she said before leading me to a room where some children were playing. My heart raced upon entering. Laughter echoed, but my gaze was immediately drawn to a boy sitting in the corner, focused on a drawing. He was about 10 years old, with brown hair and eyes that seemed to carry a world of stories. Lucas, come here, called Dona Clara, and the boy turned around. My heart stopped. It was like looking at a small reflection of my own son, Ethan. The resemblance was striking. The same shy smile, the same curious expression. Hi, he said, with a twinkle in his eye. Are you new here? In truth, no. I grew up here, I replied, trying to control the avalanche of emotions that invaded me. My name is Sarah. Sarah? What a beautiful name. Are you staying forever? Lucas asked, the innocence in his voice touching my heart. I don't know. I just came to visit, I replied, feeling strange. But something inside me began to stir, an inexplicable and deep connection, as if destiny was pushing me towards it. You look like my drawing, he said, pointing to the paper in his lap. And at that moment, I realized that this visit to the orphanage would not just be a return to the past. Something bigger was beginning to unfold, and I was about to discover secrets that would change my life forever. As I sat on the small wooden bench in the orphanage, watching Lucas play with other children, a wave of emotion washed over me. The way he smiled, the way his eyes sparkled as he talked about his dreams, it all reminded me of Ethan. Do you like playing football? I asked, trying to start a conversation. I love it, Lucas replied, his eyes lighting up even more. But I don't have a ball. Sometimes I take a stick and play a game with others. It's fun, but I wish I had a real ball." The little boy was so excited that I couldn't help but smile. His innocence touched my heart, but at the same time, a lump formed in my throat. "I can bring a ball next time I come, what do you think?" I suggested, trying to keep the tone light, although inside me, a storm of feelings was forming. "Would you really do that?" Lucas asked, his voice full of hope. "Of course. And who knows, we can play together." The answer came out with more enthusiasm than I actually felt. The truth was that my mind was racing, thinking about how this boy bore such a striking resemblance to Ethan. It was like looking into a mirror, and the idea made me uneasy. At that moment, Donna Clara approached us, interrupting our plans. "Sarah, you're doing great with him," she said, with a warm smile. "Lucas really needs someone who cares." "He's amazing," I replied, trying to hide the whirlwind of emotions. "But he'll find a family one day, won't he?" Donna Clara sighed, looking at Lucas, who is now surrounded by the other children. "We hope so. He deserves a chance, like everyone here." The conversation made me reflect. I knew what it was like to not have a family, and now, seeing Lucas there, longing to be loved, reminded me of what I longed for when I was a child. "What about you, Lucas? What would you like your family to do with you?" I asked, trying to understand more about his hopes. "I'd like to go to the park, play ball, and have a dog," he replied, so serious that I almost couldn't contain my laughter. "But the most important thing is to have someone who loves me." Those words resonated with me like an echo. The search for love was a struggle I knew well. "And do you have someone who loves you here at the orphanage?" I asked, trying to understand how he dealt with the situation. "I really like Donna Clara and my friends," Lucas said, but his expression changed slightly. "But it's different. I want a real family." The weight of that statement fell on me. I knew he was right. Friends and caregivers were important, but the sense of belonging that a family provides is unique and irreplaceable. The idea that Lucas wanted this made me even more uneasy. After a while, I said goodbye to him, but I couldn't stop thinking about our conversations. I went to Donna Clara to ask about Lucas's story. "Do you know where it came from?" I asked, curiosity consuming my mind. "Lucas was left here when he was very little," Donna Clara began, her expression sad. "Unfortunately, we don't have much information about his parents. Just a note that said he should be loved and cared for." Those words cut like a knife. I knew what it was like to be left behind, and Lucas's pain seemed to resonate within me. "And do you know if he has any chance of being adopted?" I asked, hope lighting up inside me. "We're always looking for families for the kids, but you know how hard it is. A lot of times, people look at the outside and don't see what's inside." Donna Clara looked into my eyes, and I knew she understood Lucas' struggle. I left the orphanage with a heavy heart, but at the same time, entangled in a new curiosity. What else could I find out about Lucas? Why did I feel such a strong connection with him? When I got home, the image of the boy never left my mind. Questions about my past began to arise, and an urgent need to investigate my own origins took hold of me. That day at the orphanage had changed everything. I couldn't just leave him behind. It was time to unearth secrets I never knew existed. I could still smell the fresh, damp air of the city where I grew up. With every step I took along the familiar streets, my heart pulsed with a mixture of nostalgia and anxiety. The city seemed to have stopped in time, but I knew I had changed. I decided to visit an old family friend, Mr. Renato, who always had an interesting story to tell. He was a storyteller of sorts, someone who knew the secrets that permeated the lives of everyone around him. When I arrived at his house, I found him sitting on the porch, wearing a hat and with a warm smile. "Sarah, long time. Come, sit here with me," he said, gesturing to the chair next to him. "Hi, Mr. Renato. It's good to see you again," I replied, sitting up and trying to hide the urgency I felt inside me. "I'm here to talk about my mother and the past." He frowned, as if he was pondering what I had said. "Ah, your mother, little Anna. I knew her well. A young woman full of dreams. What would you like to know?" I found out that she had a brother who disappeared when I was a child and that he was also in foster care. I began, my voice wavering. Do you know anything about this? Yes, I know. In fact, there was a time when many of the city's young people gathered at the orphanage. Your mother had a relationship with a man who also volunteered there, he explained, looking out at the horizon. He was a good man, but life took him down difficult paths. Do you know his name? I asked, my heart racing. His name was Felipe. He was passionate about the work he did. He always helped children, especially those who needed it most, said Mr. Renato, his gaze distant. But life, my dear, sometimes separates us from those we love. Ana and Felipe, like many others, have faced a series of obstacles. So, what happened to him? He's the father of the boy I met at the orphanage, Lucas. I murmured, feeling a lump form in my throat. Mr. Renato seemed surprised by the revelation. Lucas? Do you know him? He's a special child, always dreaming of having a family. And you say he looks like you? Yes. He's the image of my son, Ethan. It's like I'm looking at a reflection of my past, I replied, feeling tears start to form. I feel such a strong connection to him, but I don't know how to explain it. Sometimes connections go beyond logic, Sarah. Love can manifest itself in unexpected ways, he said, placing his hand over mine. Did you know that Ana always dreamed of building a family? She wanted to give her children what she never had. Maybe Lucas is a part of that unfulfilled dream. His words echoed in my mind, and I realized that somehow life was giving me a second chance. What should I do, Mr. Renato? How can I find out more about this connection? He smiled, his expression gentle. You need to follow your heart. The past can be complicated, but the truth always finds a way. Talk to Dona Clara, the director of the orphanage. She may have more information about Felipe and what happened to him. Thank you, Mr. Renato. I'll do it. I need to find out more about Lucas and how he fits into my life, I replied, feeling a new purpose growing within me. After saying goodbye to Senor Renato, I took the road back to the orphanage, my heart full of expectation. I knew the answers were there, waiting to be discovered. The connection between me, Lucas, and my mother felt like an intricate web, and the more I pulled at the threads, the more revelations unfolded. Deep down, something told me that this journey wasn't just about Lucas, but also about myself and what it truly meant to be a family. Visiting the orphanage was affecting me in ways I could never have imagined. The environment, although familiar, was charged with emotions that I couldn't fully process. As I sat next to Lucas in the small courtyard, under the shade of a leafy tree, the gentle breeze brought temporary relief to the storm I felt inside me. Would you like to have a family, Lucas? I asked, trying to open up space for him to share his feelings. He looked at me with those big brown eyes, which seemed to contain a universe of hopes and dreams. Yes, he replied, his voice filled with an innocence that broke my heart. Sometimes I wonder what it would be like to have a mother and father who hugged me before bed. And take me for a walk, just like you do with Ethan. He smiled shyly, and I felt a wave of affection for that boy. Do you have dreams, Lucas? What would you most like to do? I want to get to know him better, to understand what was going on in his young mind. I want to have a dog, he said excitedly. And I also want to learn how to ride a bike. But most of all, I would like to have a family that truly loves me. His words echoed in me like a painful reminder of everything I had longed for in my own childhood. I understand, I replied, trying to hold back the tears that threatened to escape. When I was little, I also dreamed about this. A family that loved me, that was always by my side. The connection between us seemed to grow every moment, and I found myself lost in a sea of emotions. As we talked, I began to realize that Lucas represented everything I had wanted as a child. He was the manifestation of a hope I had buried within me. But at the same time, I felt an internal conflict. How could I help Lucas without at the same time feeling like I was betraying my son, Ethan? The love I felt for him was undeniable, and the idea of sharing that love with another boy seemed strange to me, like I was sharing something that was supposed to be exclusive. I got up, deciding to get away from that situation for a bit. Lucas, I need to go a little further, he said, needing a moment to think. Wait here a second, okay? He nodded, and I walked toward a quieter corner of the orphanage. As I walked away, my thoughts became a whirlwind. The memories of my childhood, the insecurities I carried, and the pain of not having a family were all flooding back. Lucas's image overlapped with Ethan's, and the idea that they could be brothers was as absurd as it was charming. How could it be possible? I wasn't sure I was ready to accept this reality. As I left the orphanage, something caught my attention. A small cardboard box was leaning against one of the walls, covered in dust. Curious, I approached and opened it. Inside it, I found a yellowed letter in handwriting I would recognize anywhere. It was my mother's. "Sarah, if you are reading this, you may have already wondered about our origins," the letter said. "There's a surprise in our family that I could never reveal. A secret that could change everything. Remember, no matter where you are, you will always have a place in my heart." My heart raced. What could this surprise be? The feeling that the connection with Lucas was more than just coincidence was growing inside me, but I still didn't have the answers I so desperately needed. The letter raised more questions than answers, and I knew I needed to find out the truth. With the letter in hand, I returned to the car, my heart heavy with expectation and fear. How did this relate to Luke? And what else could my past reveal? The answers were hiding behind a curtain of doubt, and I was willing to untangle this tangle of emotions, even if it meant confronting truths I didn't want to face. Sunlight streamed through my bedroom window, illuminating every corner and bringing a comforting warmth. But inside, I was in a whirlwind of emotions. The revelation I had received from Donna Clara still resonated in my mind. Lucas, the boy I had met at the orphanage, was not just a child who awakened in me the desire to care. He was actually my younger brother. The idea that, after so many years of separation, a piece of my past had finally come back to me left me stunned. How can this be true? I whispered to myself, trying to process the information. I got out of bed and started pacing, as if that would help organize my thoughts. My heart was beating hard, and a mixture of joy and sadness invaded me. How could my mother separate me from Lucas? Where has he been all this time? I needed to know more. I decided to return to the orphanage. The walls that had been so familiar in my childhood were now charged with a new emotional charge. Upon entering, I found Donna Clara in the living room, organizing some things. His expression brightened when he saw me. "Sarah, glad you're back. We need to talk more about Lucas." "Yes, Donna Clara, I can't stop thinking about what you told me. Lucas is my brother. How did this happen? Why was he left here?" I asked, anxiety showing in my voice. Donna Clara sighed. She had to make difficult decisions. Her life was not easy, and when she became pregnant with Lucas, she was unable to take care of 2 children. I wasn't here when it all happened, but I remember his mother was very distressed. We have to remember that these decisions are not always easy. But I would like to know more about what happened. I want to understand his story, our story, I said, my voice shaking. Donna Clara approached and placed her hand on my shoulder. "I understand. There is a lot to be revealed, and Lucas deserves to know where he comes from. He needs to feel like he belongs to someone. And you need that connection too." Those words made my heart beat faster.
It was all so clear now.
I didn't just want to help Lucas. I wanted him to be part of my life, part of my family. I just don't know how to proceed. How can I make this happen? Donna Clara smiled, as if she knew that my path was taking shape. "The first thing you should do is talk to Lucas. He needs to know that you are by his side. Then we can think about how to formalize this union." I felt an impulse to run to Lucas, but before walking away, I looked into Donna Clara's eyes. "Thank you for everything. You have no idea how much this means to me. Just do what your heart asks, Sarah. And remember, family is more than blood ties."
"It's a feeling," she replied.
After that conversation, I couldn't contain my anxiety. I needed to see Lucas. When I found him in the courtyard, playing ball with some children, my heart sank. He was so full of life, so hopeful. As I approached, he saw me and smiled. "Hi, Sarah," he said, with a twinkle in his eye. "You're back." "Hi, Lucas. I needed to see you. I replied, trying to hide the depth of emotions that invaded me. Can we talk for a bit? Of course. What do you want to know? He was so carefree, so innocent. The purity of that child touched me deeply. I sat on the bench next to him and watched him, trying to find the right words. You know, Lucas, I found out some things about my family and about you. He looked at me curiously. About me? What did you discover? I discovered that we have a very special connection. You and I, we are brothers. You're my little brother, I said, the weight of the revelation almost making me hesitate. His eyes widened. Brothers? Is this serious?
Yes.
I didn't know this until now, but whenever I'm with you, I feel like I already know you from somewhere. Emotion dominated me, and I knew that, from that moment on, nothing would be the same.
Wow.
I always wanted to have a family, Lucas said, his voice full of hope. Do you really want me to be your brother? I want it, Lucas. I really want. Ever since I met you, something in me told me you were special. I replied, feeling tears of joy run down my face. He smiled, and for the first time I saw a gleam of happiness in his eyes that I hadn't seen before. So, are you going to take me home? Yes, Luke. I will do everything in my power so we can be together. I promised, feeling like I had finally found my place in the world. The first thing I felt upon entering the courtroom was butterflies in my stomach. The smell of old wood and the echo of the lawyer's footsteps reminded me of the fragility of the situation. I was about to fight not just for Lucas, but for a part of me I didn't even know existed. The social agent, a man in a dark suit with a skeptical expression, watched me as if I were a research project that he needed to evaluate. What do you have to say, Sarah? He asked, already with a tone of disdain in his voice. I took a deep breath, trying to control the anxiety that was boiling in my chest. Lucas was next to me, holding my hand tightly. He looked at me, and I saw a glimmer of hope in his eyes. I want to adopt Lucas. I started, my voice coming out firm, despite my nervousness. And I'm not just here on an impulse. I found out that Lucas is my brother. A murmur ran through the room. The social agent raised an eyebrow, clearly doubting my statement. And what is your evidence? He asked, crossing his arms. With a decisive gesture, I pulled my mother's letter from my pocket. It was yellowed with age, but the words were still clear. My mother mentioned a surprise about my past. Upon investigating, I discovered that Lucas was left at the orphanage and that he is my younger brother. I showed the letter to everyone in the room. Here, she talks about a brother who was separated from me. The social agent took the letter, reading it carefully. The silence was almost palpable. The judge, who until then had been observing the scene without commenting, finally leaned forward. Sir, this is a significant revelation. What do you have to say about this? He asked the social agent. It's an extraordinary allegation, replied the agent, visibly disconcerted. But without documents proving the biological relationship, I cannot recommend adoption. I felt the frustration building inside me. How is it possible that the love and connection I felt for Lucas wasn't enough? What if I bring a DNA test? I asked, almost begging. I can prove that we are brothers. The agent hesitated, but the determination in my eyes seemed to spark a spark of empathy. That could change things, but still, you need to consider what's best for Lucas, he argued, but his voice sounded less rigid. Lucas squeezed my hand tighter, as if encouraging me. The judge then intervened. We will postpone the hearing until Sarah presents the DNA evidence. He looked at me with an expression of understanding, as if he saw the battle that was going on inside me. I believe that the emotional connection you already have with Lucas is an important factor to consider. After the hearing, I left the courtroom with a mixture of hope and apprehension. The drive to the lab for the DNA test seemed endless. As I drove, the image of Lucas smiling replayed in my mind, and I knew I needed to fight for him. Days later, I returned to court with the test results in hand. The laboratory confirmed what my heart already knew. Lucas was, in fact, my brother. The social agent, now visibly more respectful, looked at me in a different way. I'm sorry for my previous doubts, he said, with a softer tone. The connection you have with Lucas is undeniable. When the judge spoke the words I had waited for so long, The adoption is approved. I felt like a huge weight had been lifted off my shoulders. Lucas jumped into my arms, and I hugged him with all the strength I had. "We are a family now," I screamed, and tears ran down my face. At that moment, something inside me healed. The search for the past that seemed so harrowing now turned into a bright future full of promise. The social agent, who was initially skeptical, left the room with a new perspective. He had learned that true family is not defined just by blood ties, but by the connection of love and belonging. As I left the courtroom, I held Lucas' hand as Ethan walked beside us. The new family I always dreamed of was finally complete. Amidst the laughter and hugs, I knew that everything I had faced was worth it. The unexpected connection not only transformed our lives, but also brought us together in ways I never thought possible.